Welcome to Great Northern Cascade Division in N-Scale. It has been a little while since we had an update. I've had people commenting, kind of asking what's going on with the lighting. They're excited to see it. So quick update on me. I mentioned in the last video that I was kind of fighting some elbow injury. I have surgery coming up in a couple of weeks to try and fix that. I think I mentioned before, I basically torn some tendons number of times over the years. It's at the point now where it just isn't healing itself. So I have almost no movement at this point in my left arm. I really can't grip anything. I'm not even at 25% capacity of what my right arm can do when they've done different testing. So hasn't been a lot of progress for the last couple of months. The last video that I had built the lighting deck, this kind of upper deck that now has lights. So there is a little bit of an update in this video. I got some of the painting done. Actually got all the painting done. And then I started exploring lights, and then I kind of hit a point where I just literally couldn't do it anymore. So you might sense a little bit of frustration in the video, and it kind of just ends abruptly. So apologies for that, but hopefully I can at least share some of the progress that I had made. There had been people asking about the lights that I was testing out as well. So I wanted to at least try and get this video out, share my initial thoughts on the lights. Again, there's a little bit of frustration that you might hear in the video. That's more the discomfort I had in trying to get it up, and it wasn't really working how I was expecting it to because I just couldn't get it in the right place. But now, I don't know, now I think it's okay. You got the Empire Builder, or part of the Empire Builder, kind of sitting off my shoulder there. So I think I will move ahead with these lights anyway. I just need to actually be able to install the rest of them. So I'm going to see maybe if I can rope in a little bit of help over these next couple of weeks before I go in for surgery. See if we can at least get the rest of the lights up, and maybe try and get at least some of the plywood down, so that I could do some track. Like I'm not one to sit around and rest, and I know really after this kind of surgery I'm going to need a rest. It's going to be about 3 months or so of recovery, but I want to at least be able to do something, because the last couple of months have been a little bit boring and frustrating, where I've been fairly limited in what I can do. So hope you enjoy this one. Hope you do enjoy the lights for the people that had been looking at doing these kind of lights as well. I'll put a link down in the description of the video. Again, that shares where I got the lights from, the various different kind of connectors that I got. But hopefully I can at least share a little bit of stuff over the next 2 or 3 months over the summer, as I'm trying to make a little bit of progress. Otherwise, if you don't hear from me until like end of August, start of September, that's why I haven't gone anywhere. I am still here. I just can't do a whole lot down on the railroad. So thanks for watching, take care, and hopefully we'll get back together at least some point later on in the summer. So this is with the first coat of paint / primer put down. Nothing really super exciting. Didn't bother doing any videos. I was going through it. It would literally have been like watching paint dry. I've got all the way through, and depending on where we are, the coverage was better or worse than others, and how much time and interest I had in getting a really thick coat of that primer. I wanted to do fairly thin coats anyway, but I'm a little surprised at how long it took. It was way more than I was expecting, but it's also something like 100 feet of this lighting framework to get painted. So I'm going to try and get one more coat on, and then take a step back and objectively hope that one more coat is enough to cover it, and I can call it good. We'll see how that goes. So this is now with that second kind of finishing coat done. Again, this has like been 5 hours or something to get all of this done, so I am probably going to call it good at 2 coats. This is really as much as I need to do. Just kind of cover the wood, get some kind of white finish on it, so that when the lights are on there, one, helps reflect a little bit of light down, and you're also not then just looking straight up at some bare wood. A little bit frustrated that because it had taken so long, the tape was left on the wall for a little bit too long. There's plenty of places where it did a pretty fine job on my expert quality drywalling and painting, not so much. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think it's mostly in the areas where the drywall, I didn't coat the entire drywall with a skim coat or anything like that. I just primed it and painted it, so I think that's where it started with the paper off. I don't really care, because there's going to be skyboards over everything here. People had asked before, are the skyboards going to be squared off? No, they're not. They're going to be curved, so probably about here. It'll then bend away from the wall and curve around and then reattach to the wall.
somewhere like that. So I think that's going to be my next job, at least get some of the skyboard sections in place, because I do have LEDs that came in. I have about 18 feet of LED strips just to kind of test it out, see how that's going to look. And so I think it's going to be best if I actually have the skyboards in place, probably not paint them, but at least try out getting the skyboards in place. To do that, I've got some more strips of plywood like this that I'm going to just attach against the wall. On the studs, though, they don't really need to be. It's not going to really carry any kind of weight, but just to give something that goes around to attach it to, bring it off the wall, you know, just about 3/8 of an inch or so, and then I've got 1/8 inch hardboard that will then actually act as the backdrop. 8x4 sheets are just going to get ripped into just under 16 inches wide, so I can get 3 skyboards out of a sheet, and then kind of put those on and see how that looks. Alright, so I kind of skipped putting up some skyboards. I really wanted to see what these lights were like, and then threw down a quick bit of track and try and see what it's like. So the camera, I don't think, is quite picking it up. It looks a little bit darker than it actually is, although actually in person it's also not quite what I was wanting. I may need to play with it a little bit in terms of placement of the lights, placement of the tracks, but this is the lighting, and again, I'm not quite sure how the camera is picking it up. It looks, at least when I'm looking on the back of the screen, to have a bit of a bluish tint to it that's being cast on the back. The wall is a very light grey. There is no blue cast at all when you're looking at it in person, but it is creating some odd shadows on the camera, which is kind of important in a way. It maybe sounds a little vain in that I'm going to be standing here and operating trains, and so really what does it look like to my eye when I'm running it? Does it look okay? And yes, it does, but a large part of this is also going to be trying to share some of this on YouTube, and I enjoy photography, I enjoy the video aspect of it, and so I also want to make sure that this layout is going to look good from that perspective. And I won't say I'm underwhelmed by the lighting, but I'm glad that I only purchased 18 feet of it rather than the 125 feet that I need for this upper deck. First thoughts on the lights, that it's very thick. It's a lot thicker than I thought it was going to be. It's, I don't know, probably is about 3/8 of an inch thick, top to bottom, and then over 1/2 inch wide. Fairly heavy, and so I've kind of spaced these at 2-foot intervals, and I haven't screwed the brackets and the mounting brackets in all the way. That's a separate gripe, but it's too heavy to really support itself without drooping. I kind of expected that, but when I've looked around at the actual channel tracks for this, that adds another $1.50 per foot, kind of depending on what option you go with. Either plastic tracks for it or looking at aluminum strips. So, you know, there's added cost that goes into this. The other one, like I said, are the actual brackets themselves. It's kind of hard to see. They're flexible. I expected these to be a hard plastic, and they're not. They're a very flexible plastic. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I get why they've done it, but I wanted something that was more solid. There are also then tiny little brass screws that are just slotted head, and so they're really a pain to try and screw in, which is why they're only screwed in that far. I had to use a little electrical screwdriver, you know, jewelry type screwdriver, to be able to screw those in, because the head's so small on them. So I'm looking at, okay, if I go this route, would have to use different screws. Now, one thing to remember is that a lot of well-intentioned comments have come on YouTube about different ideas on lighting. You need to remember, I'm looking at about 125 feet per deck. I have 3 decks to do. I'm in for just shy of probably 400 feet of lighting. And so I have to be very, very careful in terms of what my lighting choices are, in terms of cost, in terms of installation, and in terms of power draw. So I kind of gone with these. These are AC50 LEDs, because you can have a string of up to 150 feet off a single outlet. And so it's actually, very cleverly done in a way. See it dropping down, and so right there, there's a little power part, and then it just plugs straight into an outlet, and then with the that quadplex outlet, it can then just toggle the power on and off, and it does then toggle, obviously that string of lights on, and so you could scale that up to the 125 feet or so that I need for each of the decks. But it is a pain to install because these are so small. The video is casting weird shadow and blue haze, which is not here in person at all. The other one, someone had asked in the comments, and I apologize, I'm forgetting your name, how well does this flex? It flexes perfectly that way, but in terms of trying to get it around a corner, it won't. And so, yeah, even on a very broad radius, you would have to support it a lot to try and get it around. It probably could, but it's designed to flex this way, so up and down. It's not designed to flex around a corner. Like when I try to push it around, it won't go. So I have seen people where they do that kind of thing, all right, where they would have a bracket either way, and so then it does kind of bend in, and so if we come back, it's not too bad. It points the light to the back rather than the front, but there's enough light that it would work. So that would be one option, but you'd still have, the weird bracket solutions. They do make, let's try and grab that one. They do make these, which are kind of 90 degrees. Again, I got these just to kind of look at them and see what happens. And so you cut it, and then you put one end in here, put the pins in, the other end comes out there, put the pins in, connect it up, and you can go around a 90 degree like that. So that's one option. They do also then have these, which are little pigtails almost, so the same kind of idea, but they're much more flexible. And so, if you didn't want to have a hard 90 degree, what I could maybe do is cut here, and then this pigtail. I think this one was 3 inches. They have them in different lengths, 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 inches, something like that. I think that this was a 3-inch jumper, but I might be wrong. And so the idea there is that I could then just use kind of the flexible jumper between them. So there are different options for getting around a corner. But again, the weight of these, at least on 2-foot spans, not really an option. I don't want to add in additional cross pieces at 1 foot. One, because that's a lot more work, it's a lot more lumber, it's a lot more weight. I've got to do more painting, and it was 10 hours of painting just as it was. So, yeah, I need to kind of think through this, and then again, just kind of coming back to on video, at least looking at the little screen on the back of the GoPro, it isn't putting out a ton of light. Yeah, I guess I'm not underwhelmed, but I'm not sold on these. To the naked eye standing here, it feels fine. And so in terms of some kind of distances, this is set 3 inches back from the front, and then no, it's not right. That's set 4 or 5 inches back from the front, and then the front here to the edge is 2 inches, and then it's about another 3/4 of an inch to the track. So the light isn't directly above. I feel like it is giving enough light when I'm standing looking at it, but yeah, I may need to play with distances a little bit, but that's at least initial first thoughts on the LED lights. They are expensive for what they are. It's about $4 per foot, so it's really going to add up by the time I try doing almost 400 feet of it. The ease of installation isn't quite where I thought because of these little brass screws. I need to think of something else to do that. Might not even use them depending on how I'm actually going to mount it, if I need to have some kind of channel or mounting strip all the way around. So I'm going to play around a little bit more. Maybe move the lights forward and back a little bit, maybe move the track forward and back a little bit, and then maybe try throwing a skyboard behind it and see if that helps with kind of the weird shadow and hue that I can see. But at least on this one, where you've got 16 inches between the two decks, on the camera it's not great. I think it might be fine on the middle deck, where there's enough ambient light coming down at that middle deck that's only set, actually that's not a great example over here, the middle deck where I think it's set 11 inches apart. I think that would work great. It does have that very low profile, which you would kind of need because there's not a ton of room to try and put like, you know, regular 4-foot LED strip lights in there. But I do need to think, because I don't particularly want to be mixing and matching LEDs either, because then you have slightly different color temperatures, you have slightly different brightness between them, and so again, visually, both standing here and also then on camera, then you've got slightly different color temperatures, brightnesses, things like that, and it might get a little bit distracting. So I'll play around with this one a little bit more, maybe so we'll come back and I'll have a few more thoughts on it. Alright, so this is now with 2 of those strips in place. Did just a very simple strip of, I think it's 1 1/4 inch pine oak. It was like $1 a foot. Just some kind of strip that is then attached to the underside of that lighting framework. And then the lights still attached with these annoying little plastic clips, but I did swap them out for number 4. I think they're 3/8 inch screws, so at least there's a Phillips head on them. So if you're going to look at doing these lights, ditch the little brass flathead screws that come with them and swap them out for something like the number 4 3/8 inch. But now that 2 strips of lights are in place, and now that the lighting is pretty much flush, I'm having a hard time reaching up here, sorry. Now that the lighting is pretty much flush with the actual edge, we seem to have much better lighting now. And it could also be that, you know, there's now 2 sets of lights sources that are kind of bringing lights in from 2 different directions. But if we come in a little bit close, and again, there's no light on the GoPro. I do have a little light sometimes that runs, but there's no light here. Just to give an example, once we turn it on, we do start to add a little bit more light. Becomes a little bit too harsh maybe, but there is still the option to throw a little bit more light even just off the GoPro camera, and it can flash so you can get some kind of idea as to the differences between this. Turn it off because it's annoying. So I think that these lights probably as well actually work just with 1 strip. They are a little fiddly. I think what I would probably do is they have like a mounting track that goes with this. It's basically a clear plastic track, somewhat rigid clear plastic track that the lights would then clip, well not clip, but just like pops into, and so it holds the whole thing flush. Whereas with these clips, they're only at the moment every 19, or just under 19 inches. That's kind of the cutting point for these. So I think probably we'll go ahead and order the rest of the lighting for this upper deck at least, and get the clear plastic track for it to hold it in place. And then probably won't even need to bother with this, you know, this kind of board. It is a little expensive. I think it works out at about $1.70 a foot for that plastic track, but I'm at just over $1 a foot anyway if I did that kind of 1 1/4 inch strip that's going to hold it up. And then I need more plastic clips because the number of clips that they give with obviously isn't enough, so I need to buy more of those, and then the screws, and I think it's probably about a wash. So price wise it would all add up, but I think it would be a cleaner finish. I think it would hold them a little bit more. Certainly if you come over here you can see the kind of drooping, and it's not twisting a lot, but the light is twisting just ever so slightly around, and so it's not going to give a fully uniform finish if I try to do something like this. But at least it's somewhat encouraging. It does work. Couple of caveats again if you're looking at doing this, and I'm you know, when I go ahead and I do more specifically on lighting, can get into this. The lengths are a little weird. The cutting points on them, it comes as 1 big strip, whatever length you order, but the cutting points are just under 19 inches. It's like 18 inches and 7/8 or something weird like that, and so it doesn't fit on nominal length that you might be using. So for example, that length that we're looking at here is an 8-foot length, 96 inches, and the light actually goes over just a little bit because you can't cut it right at 8 feet. The connectors then become a little bit awkward too. Sorry, I'm having a really hard time reaching up and trying to point things out with my elbow. So these connectors are kind of like the pigtail connectors. This is one option for like a flexible connection. The 90-degree ones aren't really going to be usable because you can't cut it at a precise length. I can't just put in a 90 degree here because actually this one coming in goes a little bit longer, and we have the same if we follow it over on this other side. I can't cut it at the exact length that I want, and so we're about 5 inches over here, which is okay because it's going to then light up a little bit more of this scene. But it means when I then put the lighting in, that's going to run all the way down this peninsula. Again, I can't put a 90 degree in here. I have to get actually a longer pigtail because now I've got to bring the light source back to about here so that zip can run off. So little things to think about, especially given the cost of the lighting, but it is throwing off a good amount of light. It really isn't giving off any amount of heat at all. I can comfortably hold that. It's not even warm to the touch. I wouldn't even consider it maybe lukewarm to the touch. There is, again, a little bit of a weird shadow kind of behind sometimes on the GoPro, almost flickering a little bit kind of as I move the camera. There we go. But it's not actually there in person when you're looking at it. So I think that this will work out pretty well. Now it's just ordering the rest of it, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to install it, to be honest. So we'll see how it goes.